Luck is the best superpower, said Elon Musk. And Larry King reminded us that those who succeed at anything and don't mention luck are kidding themselves. Bob Bennett's story epitomizes the American dream. Enjoy his perspective on luck in life, the power of having a chip on your shoulder, and the importance of building rapport with prospects, no matter how awkward it is. Take a listen, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and comment on LinkedIn to share your thoughts. Let's go. Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Bennett. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started. Today's guest is a serially successful human being who attributes almost everything to luck, and we're going to get into that later. He's the founder and former CEO of Microfridge, Invoice Cloud, and EngageSmart. In fact, EngageSmart IPO'd in 2021. Huge feat, since less than 0.01% of companies actually exit via the public markets. Currently, he's on the board of Invoice Cloud and Simple Practice. And in his spare time, he's seeking relevant opportunities to add value and help create wealth for entrepreneurs in disadvantaged communities. Bob Bennett, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Matt, great to see you. Thank you for inviting me to embarrass myself on the show today.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both. But you know what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
So I hear.
So, Bob, let's get right into it. It's a little bit of a softball question to get us started, but there's a lot of myths in our business. Especially I came up through the sales ranks. What's a myth in the business of coaching and leading people, salespeople, sales managers, that you believe is either misguided or maybe even complete BS?
Well, as salespeople, it is typically viewed as I'm looking for a person that's gregarious, extroverted, organized, super hardworking, and somebody that is naturally persuasive. And I think that's a myth, because I have managed many salespeople over time that are highly introverted, frankly, and yet still very successful, and in many cases more successful than their extroverted counterparts that are so extroverted that they are social all the time and not as focused on the task at hand, which might be making 80 to 100 calls a day. So I think that is I think that the myth that you've got to be a gregarious extrovert and sort of naturally persuasive is a myth. I also think that the fact is, none of us in sales and sales management, almost none of us, have had any training before we get in on the job. You don't get it in school, right? I mean, it's only recently that any universities and colleges across the country have started to introduce sales and how to whether it's merchandising and low ticket, small ticket sales or versus enterprise sales, that they even introduced the subject into their curriculum, which is interesting to me, of course, because if I, as a CEO for decades now, I understand that accounting and finance represents about 5% of my operating cost of a company, but my sales and go-to-market team is probably 20% or more of my expenses. So accounting courses, finance courses in colleges, hundreds. Sales courses in colleges, bupkis. So what is going on here? We've got 20% of our expense cost with no teaching and no training coming out of colleges and universities. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, I think that's a subject to discuss at another time. But since we are all starting at the same place because none of us have any training, we can develop the traits and the behaviors that are necessary for us to truly understand how to be superior and get into that top 1% through our own study and through our own, mentorship and coaching from talented sales coaches and trainers like you to bring ourselves to that top level. And we're all starting on the same page, right? We level playing field. That doesn't happen very much. It doesn't happen to electrical engineers. One goes to MIT and gets a
Right.
4.0. They're at a big advantage over the student that went to the University of Maine like I did and came out with something that's not a 4.0, right? So, and now, of course, the social skills that you might pick up, you know, might be more important ultimately in whatever you do as a future leader. But the academic side of it for a lot of jobs is quite important. Anyway, I mean, in the profession of sales, we have done ourselves a disservice. Let's face it, right? I mean, you take movies like Glengarry Glen Ross and Tin Man, and I mean, you think used
Yeah,
cars. You got, I mean, just
that's it.
it's just it's embarrassing what we've done to ourselves in this industry. And because of that, we are guilty of perpetuating a negative flywheel around
Yes.
image on sales. Okay. I'm on the other side of this, obviously, because I am a sales driven CEO, and my foundational time, what really made me successful ultimately, not just in business, but in life, has been the sales background and the sales time that I put in. I mean, it forced me to get through awkward, hard, difficult discussions, to look at no's as actually just one step closer to a yes. And that has been critical to me in my career. And I think it is critical. I mean, I think that if I'm looking for a CEO, I'm looking for somebody that's gone through this hard selling process and really grown their career into a pinnacle of sales success at one time, because everybody is selling in a company and the CEO is probably selling harder than anybody else, right?
Especially at the beginning and the formation of the company, for sure. And you know that, right? What happened to isn't the phrase, nothing happens until somebody sells something, yet until recently, sales wasn't really uh, seen at all in universities across this country. Bob, I want to dig into that extroversion myth a little bit and tie it back to something I've heard you talk about in the past, and that's the importance of building rapport. When I found my way, it was a happy accident that I landed in sales, and it wasn't probably for the best reasons. I think my mother and her friends said, "Oh, hey Matt, you're a people person," which really they're saying is you're a blowhard. You should go into sales. I mean, I think that's kind of how this probably got started. Um, but I've heard you talk about the importance of building rapport and actually creating almost a science behind it, a process for building rapport. I might have that a little bit wrong. Can you talk about where rapport fits in your mind?
No, you don't have it wrong, because Matt, like, let's getting back to that little disservice that we have done to ourselves in the profession of sales. If I go into a store, let's see, even if I go into a car dealership, and I'm obviously going into a car dealership to look at a car, right? And a salesperson approaches me, I'm like, I get a little bit tense. I'm like, oh God, here we go. I'm going to get sold something I don't want to buy. I'm in a car dealership. I'm in there to look and find something. Someone says, can I help you? Just looking. Okay, really? You're going to just waste your time. Of course, time is everything and you shouldn't be wasting it, but you're going to waste your time by actually not really getting the information that you should be getting from somebody that actually understands it, right? So we do this naturally, even though, especially partly because as salespeople, we are the easiest marks. We want to buy. I mean, we're easy to sell because we empathize with salespeople, right? So the reason that we don't actually want to be talked to by that salesperson is because we don't trust that salesperson. If that salesperson happens to be the person, surprisingly, the person that you grew up with that was your best friend in high school and you went to college with that person, they walk up and say, "Oh my God, Bob, what are you doing here? You're buying a car? Oh my God, let me help you." It's like, "Oh my God, of course. Yeah, let me tell you what I'm looking for." Why? Why do we do that with that person? Because we have full trust in that person. Ah, hence the need to build trust. Enterprise sales, large ticket sales. I mean, anything that's significant, long-term contracts. It could be an airplane, could be something, could be a house, could be something much smaller. People want to buy, will only buy from people that they trust ultimately, right? So how do you create that trust with somebody that you don't know, that you've never met, and that suddenly you're in front of? In my opinion, the best way to do it is to get awkward quick and to go into rapport building. And I mean, as a science, build rapport, which means you've got to have if you're new in this business and you're not good at building rapport and you don't spend at least 5 minutes building rapport at the beginning of every one of your sales calls, whether it's first call, prospecting call, you get somebody, you're an SDR, you're trying to create a discovery. All you're trying to do is create an appointment for a discovery call with an inside salesperson. You got to build rapport right from the beginning. You've got to be speaking to that person on the other end as if they're your best buddy, even though you've never met them. It's got to be more of a, "Hey, what's up? I got any plans for the evening or the weekend? I know that this is a cold call. Yes, I'm in sales. Yes, you can hang up on me at any time, but my methodology and our methodology is to get to know somebody, try to get an understanding of where they've been, where they are now, and where they're going outside of business, personally, where they've been personally, like where'd you grow up? What was it like? What was your family like? Did you move around? Did you stay in one place? Did you go to a public school? Did you go to a private school? What happened I want to know a little bit about your past. I want to know where you are now personally and your happiness level and quotient, and where are you going? What do you aspire to personally, ultimately? You are and intend to be, living on a mountain or a lake, or are you intending to, love the city? That's where you want to get. I want to know something about that. And I would love to be able to spend at least 5 minutes to get to find that out. Can you give me 5 minutes to build rapport so that we can get to know each other? Because in my history, in my experience, getting to know somebody, understanding where they've been, where they are, and where they're going has enabled me to be able to help them get there in many
Right.
cases. And I'm that person that loves to help. So can we spend 5 minutes to build rapport? Matt, are you in?
I'm in. And um, the question there is because some people struggle with this, right? I think instinctively most people know that the importance of building rapport, but they go about it in a way that comes off as insincere or inauthentic, right? How was your weekend? And you said the same thing. How was your weekend? But there's something different about what you're saying. And I think it's the permission-based question that you're asking that ties back to getting awkward quick. And these are my words, not yours, but it sounds like you say something like, hey, Bob, before we get started, can we just spend 4 or 5 minutes getting to know each other a little bit? That way we can, figure out how we can best help each other. I mean,
Perfect.
that's a question.
That's a great question. You're getting your permission there, right? And it's transparent. I mean, I even say, "Hey, my methodology and our methodology as a company involves getting to know each other because, we want to provide ultimately to those where it makes sense, an appropriate service that actually helps them. Personally, I need to know you so that I understand where you're going, so I understand how much we can then get involved in helping you personally." So, this is part of our process. It works. We have hundreds of customers where we started with a conversation, just like me. I was a salesperson at one time. I'm a CEO now. I mean, those people have moved forward. Those people are now, many of the people that we started with are now running their utilities or their tax authorities and so forth. or their insurance companies. They have grown because we help them get their jobs done more effectively than they were before us. It may not happen here. It's okay. I just don't want to, it's not going to be a waste of time. And like I said, if you get tired of me, click, I'm gone. Right.
Right.
So, but let's get that straight. And we're also going to get into the business. So, Matt, interestingly, many times you've got that that body language from the prospect that says, "Whoa, yeah, wait, yeah, I don't really, I don't want to get to know you. It's like I'm here to talk about business. I'm here to talk about your solution for our whatever it is, right?" And when they bring you in during that 5 minutes and say, "Hey, listen, TikTok, we're running out of time to get into the business side of this." How do you think, Matt, how do you think that salesperson should be responding to that? We're 2 minutes or 1 minute into rapport building.
So that's a question for me.
I'm asking you. You're the trainer here.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost look at it like, okay, so if I'm reading the room, I'm realizing that there's a disconnect. I am not connecting with this person. People buy from, people want to buy. They don't want to be sold. They're going to buy from people that they trust, and people don't care what you know until they know that you care about them. So if they're pivoting off of that rapport fast, they're trying to send you a message. That message may be, I am not interested at all, or you're doing something wrong. And so I would fall on my sword there and say, hey, I feel like you're going to chapter 2 and I'm still on chapter 1. I feel like I'm saying something that, not resonating with you. I'm not making the best first impression. Am I missing something here? So throw something out like that to disarm that.
So then you would go to chapter 2, which I think is what most salespeople will do.
Well, I wouldn't go to chapter 2. I would fall back and say, hey, you're trying to go to chapter 2. In my head, I don't feel like we should go there yet. I think we need to make sure we both read chapter 1 first. I would actually get them to say everything's okay.
So what has happened when you do that? So I think that's the right approach. It's like, look, we just started building rapport. I can tell that you probably are not that comfortable. Not that many people that you don't know start asking you questions about where you've been, where you grew up. I mean, it sounds disingenuous, but it isn't. I actually am interested. I need to learn more about you. That's part of what makes me. I spend my life talking about our solution. I need to spend time getting to know people because it just works better. So when you actually take that step back, and I like the way you did it too, Matt, was saying, "Great, you want to move to chapter 2, but I really would like to just spend a few more minutes in chapter 1." You have now seized control of the agenda with the prospect. Instead of you looking up to the prospect like their time is worth so much more than your time, you've now made it even, right? We're now peer to peer. So you've seized control of the agenda. You've now got a peer to peer relationship already. You've gone through a little bit of awkwardness, and awkwardness actually creates a natural bond subconsciously, as like two people that are standing on the street and a car turns around and hits a hydrant, and you witness this, and somebody like lost control of the car, and this person next to you, when you go through that awkward thing, you suddenly have a bond with that person that you don't even know because you both saw this weird thing. It's like, do we call the cops? Do we help this person? What do we do? So going through a little awkward pause and a little awkward stage during that rapport building isn't a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Embrace the awkwardness. You ask a question like, so do you have a family? Well, my wife just left me. It's like, oh, sounds like I got into a sensitive place. I can certainly skip over that if you're uncomfortable discussing that, or move to something else like, your hobbies or your sports or whatever you'd like. Is that it? Did I touch a nerve there? And then pause. The pause is critical.
The pause is huge. And that whole get awkward early that you're talking about, I love it. When we teach it, Bob, we call it a pattern interrupt, based on the principles of disarming honesty, right? And then, I guess technically the tool in the toolbox, we call it sense it, say it. If you're sensing something, verbalize it, right? And that's going to differentiate you from that nervous salesperson who just goes to chapter 2 because that's where the prospect who's up on the pedestal, to whom they've subordinated themselves, that's where the prospect is taking them. And then I love what you're talking about that pattern interrupt creates that equal business stature.
Exactly. It level sets you as a peer. All right. So what were we talking about? Were we talking about rapport building? Yeah,
well,
that's it.
Well, so I think we hit that. So we hit rapport building. We talked extroversion is a myth. We talked about the importance of building rapport, and thank you for also showing how to do it. Like, what's an example? I want to go to something else that we talked about in our first conversation together, and I alluded to at the top of the call in the intro. It's the role that luck plays. You said something along the lines of, I said, wow, you said, hey, I'm lucky. And I said, well, you worked really hard for that. And you said, no, it's all luck. What's the role that luck plays in one's career and one's life?
Well, it's funny to say, what is the role luck plays? I think I don't think of luck as playing a role. I think of luck as actually defining your life. Okay, so it's not a role. Understand that what many see as bad luck. I see the book Dave Goggins there, behind you. That guy had a really, really tough upbringing, right? But you would look at that, and I heard him, and I listened to the book, and it was incredible what he dealt with as a child. Very difficult. I mean,
Yeah,
abusive father.
absolutely.
I mean, just horrible. And yet his DNA and his makeup, which was out of his control, frankly, because it's luck, he took that adversity as fuel to put a chip on his shoulder to do great things. Navy SEAL, set the pull-up records. I mean, this guy is unreal, right? David Goggins. I mean, this is like, oh my God. My leadership team, a bunch of us in our leadership team read the book together. It was inspiring, right? Just to say, look, you can, if you don't think that you can do something, you can do something. You can do almost anything if you really put the time and effort into it and say no to things that aren't relevant in your life so that you actually can focus the time on things that are relevant in your life. So, yeah, I believe that, yes, I mean, I have had a very fortunate career. I mean, and life. I mean, look, it's been, but the career has been a big part of it. But very happily married with children, grandchildren. I mean, it's been a dream. I've frequently said, the inside of my watch that was a gift to me says, living the dream, because it's a statement of mine. It's like, yeah, how are you doing? I'm like, living the dream. Come on, are you kidding me? American dream. I don't come from anything, and yet, I actually made something of myself through luck, because I was, in a bit of an adverse environment growing up. I had reasons that, that some people would go down a negative path. And I, at some point, had the right DNA, RNA, whatever it is, to actually take that adversity and create a motivational drive to aspire for, financial independence, for leadership, and starting my own companies and that type of thing. And it developed in me through through my high school and then college in particular, and then my early days in sales after I did some engineering, a confidence. I'm, I'm sure many would view it as a swagger, whether it's swagger or confidence, whatever. But I actually started to believe that, hey, What can I not do? I can do whatever. And that's just the truth. You don't have to be a genius. I am living proof that you don't have to be a genius to be pretty successful. And what you do need to do is actually be able to bring in people that are going to be better than you, hopefully, at what you can help. You can teach them. Ultimately, they can take it to another level. You need to be collaborative. You need to be a somebody that provides agency to others to actually be successful. Let them fail. Help them coach through it, and then learn from failure. I mean,
Mhm.
you can't. The book smarts only goes so far. But yes, I am a believer that if you're born smart, you're lucky. If you had a very positive nurturing from your parents, then you're very lucky. If you had a negative nurturing from your parents and you've developed a chip that provided you with motivation to overcome that adversity, you're very lucky. Warren Buffett says that he won the ovarian lottery. He probably did, right? Because he was white, male, born in the Midwest to parents that appreciated education, and he had a knack for business. He says, I won the ovarian lottery. I'm ahead of 95% of the world before I even, was slapped to make my first cry. Right. So, it's a fact. I mean,
Yeah.
luck.
So true. And my 92-year-old stepfather talks about that every time I talk to him, or my kids talk to him. He talks about how, he tells my kids how they won life's lottery. And they don't always feel that way. But Bob, not only did you make something of your life, but you helped other people. You've had an impact on a lot of other people's lives. I read a post in preparation for this interview from your former chief people officer. I forget her name, but she left. Took some time off and just talked and thanked you and the team profusely about the run that she had at the company. And I'm sure that there are many more people like that. And I'm sure that feels enormously rewarding to you.
Yes, but
And
but Matt, it does. I mean, so now you're giving, right? You're mentoring, you're giving, you're helping people be more successful in their sales jobs, right? That's
yeah,
rewarding. That's rewarding to you, right? So it's still, this is going to sound weird, but it's also what makes us feel good about ourselves. So there's a selfish aspect, and the strange world of reciprocity. The more you give, the more you get back. And in fact, it comes back to you exponentially, right? Is this your experience? It is mine.
absolutely.
It's like the more
Yes.
you give, the more people start giving back to you. And the next thing you know, you say, well, geez, I got to give more. So you give more, and yet even more comes back in. It's like that cornucopia thing where you start with something that's the thin end, but then it ends up as a bunch of flowers and vegetables and all that stuff on the other side of it. So the sooner a person understands that giving is the way to receive ultimately, and it's so, I mean, you look at it, it could be looked at as selfish, but in fact it is the right thing to do. You will always be rewarded. You can't give too much. You will always be rewarded.
And so, Bob, you've talked a lot about the importance of finding that chip. I guess two-part question. What about people who weren't born into humble circumstances? Somebody like a David Goggins, right? He can find that chip and run with it. Tom Brady, right? You're a Boston guy, or Tom Brady, right? Drafted 199th, right? He had, I think, seemingly fine middle class family, positive upbringing, but he was drafted 199th. He had that chip. What about
He
people
found
who were
that chip.
born
He found that chip. He found that.
pounded? There you
He
go, right? Because he didn't
recognized
grow
it.
up with it.
He created it as a motivator. Like I will. So I'm going to say that was in his DNA, right? He obviously likes likes a little bit of publicity, and he's deserved it, right? I mean, the guy has had an amazing career, But I think it's really, I think the question's super valid. What about those that were born with a silver spoon?
Yeah.
My children and your children
Right.
are in
Yeah.
different circumstances than you and I were in when we were growing up, right?
That's the origin of my question, quite frankly, is, like my kids grew up differently than me. Where do
So they're at a
how do they find the
disadvantage.
chip?
They're at a disadvantage. They're at a disadvantage in terms of actually having to overcome adversity, but they actually have a different advantage, which is a parent that's going to explain to them that you've got to find your chip. You've got to find your own motivation. Tom Brady, loves his parents, and he's very fond of his parents. I mean, he always cites them as being instrumental. I'm sure they made him work hard. I mean, I think that he, if you look at his transformation from the University of Michigan ultimately to the body that he has today, he worked a lot harder once he got the chip. That's the
Right.
fact, right? So by being drafted so in such a late round, and telling Robert Kraft that that's the best decision that this organization has ever made.
Swagger.
Swagger. So now I would say that you've got to find it. You've got to find that motivation. And I think that, I have 3 children, they're hardworking, and, I've explained to them that, the way that I've tried to create that chip, if you will, is around time. We're not going to run out of money, you and me. Probably nobody listening to this is going to run out of money either, but we're all going to run out of time. So, in the limited amount of time that we are on this planet, we need to be seeking happiness. Happiness meaning whatever makes us happy from a family standpoint, from a business or a vocational standpoint, but also from an avocational standpoint. So I encourage them to build balance in their life, but to make a mark. And it's only I can't make a mark for them. They can only make a mark for themselves. So
Avocational. I'm,
yeah,
I'm from Chelsea. What's that mean?
avocational being your hobby. So you like
Okay.
music. I picked up the bass in COVID, and I've learned a bunch of songs and love it. Take lessons every Monday night. That's crazy, but
Nice.
I started Invoice Cloud, by the way, at 53, your age, right? So I'm an idiot, and I think that that's part of it, right? Why be normal? But now this is my normal, is to be a little bit off, right? And I think that you know, avocation is what you do for your hobby. So I played squash this morning around just, 100 yards from here. And, so I exercise. I love music. I play music. I listen to music a lot. I like to write. I mean, lots of things that I like to do. If you're not spending time on your avocation, on your vocation, and on family, any of those 3 pieces of the human pie, if any of those are starting to go into decline, it's all going to go into decline. You need to make sure that you're paying attention to all 3 of those appropriately. It doesn't mean you put more time into your avocation than you put into your family or into your vocation. But if you're not putting appropriate time in that makes you feel good about yourself and in life balance, you're making a mistake. People that work all the time, that's a treadmill
Yeah.
that is going the wrong way.
Yeah. We've seen that way too many times. And I feel very fortunate. I feel lucky that I learned that lesson early enough. Not as early as I probably should have, but I learned it in enough time. Really, really good words. Yeah. Bob, you've talked about compounding, and we all know about the magic of compound interest. You referenced Warren Buffett earlier. Can you talk about the importance and the power of compounding experiences?
Yes, yeah, I think that's really, and the example I like to use, Matt, is let's say that we have 2 salespeople that start the same day in the same capacity as inside sales or SDRs in a company. Start the same day, they go through the same training. At the end of the first week, one of those salespersons, the salesperson A, worked 48 hours and salesperson B worked 40 hours. It's not that big a difference. It's an extra 20% of the amount of time, but they both put in a week, and the salesperson B put in the required amount. Salesperson A put 20% more than the required amount. At the end of 1 week, I mean, we are all, first of all, in sales, we didn't learn anything in school. We already established that. So at the end of 1 week, that person that put 20% more in has 20% more experience than than salesperson B, which is not that big a deal. It's just 1 week. But let's say that happens again in week 2. And now that person put another 8 hours in more than salesperson B. And this continues for a while. So every week, salesperson A is actually putting 20% more time in, just like compounded interest versus simple interest in the bank, right? I mean, if you're getting 10% a year on $100, you're getting $10 a year in simple interest. But if you're getting 10% on $100 and it's compounding even every day, at the end of 5 years, you've got a lot more money in that compounded interest. So experience is the same way. So what happens is, I'm a CEO, sales-driven CEO, but CEO nonetheless. If I'm looking for somebody to ask a question, or I actually happen to be a person that puts 48 hours in as well, and I'm asking to look and getting a quick response that says, hey, if you talk to somebody in sales that does this, I'm going to go find that person that's working the extra 8 hours. And I'm actually going to, if I got a little project, I'm going to provide that salesperson A with the opportunity to run that project or to tech that thing. So that salesperson A is now getting mentoring from more mentoring than the other salesperson B. Well, we know what the story goes. At the end of a year, that person that worked an extra 20 hours a week has probably 2 years worth of experience compounded versus salesperson B. Okay. Now, I mean, it sounds trite. Maybe I'm trying to talk people into working harder. I'm not trying to talk to people into doing anything. I'm simply explaining that this is what happens. If you do work more time and you do put extra time in, it does make a difference. It is a compounding of experience that actually ultimately yields the winner.
Yeah. I love the example. And as you're talking through it, I think Malcolm Gladwell talked about this in one of his books. It might have been Outliers. The analogy that he talked about was Canadian hockey players.
Yeah.
And how they get started earlier, and usually for whatever reason, their birthdays happen to be early part of the year, so they're young for their grade. And so anyway, by the time they're 18 years old, they've had way more experience than, let's say, a traditional American youth hockey player. But
exactly,
all different examples.
they put their 10,000 hours in. The faster you put your 10,000 hours in, the faster you are a master, right? I mean, the Gladwell also in that book used the example of the piano recital training in Germany, where people of unequal talents actually became very much equal talent once they got 10,000 hours in. Strange.
Interesting. Really, it really is fascinating stuff. Let's pivot a little bit, Bob. Let's talk about something that's near and dear to your heart, and that you built. So, in terms of Invoice Cloud and EngageSmart, simple practice. You're on the board now. Can you just, for the audience, what does Invoice Cloud do? And then B, what are you most excited about now in terms of where you are, where the company is, and where it's going?
Sure. Invoice Cloud is an electronic bill presentment and payment company. So online billing for utilities. I don't want to get a paper bill anymore. I want to just sign up for auto pay it out of my checking account, or pay it with a credit card automatically. It's the same bill. I still get the opportunity to see how much it is every month. If I want to look at the bill, I can look at it online. I don't need to get paper. So, helping the environment a little bit by cutting back on the amount of paper that's being produced, postage, reducing expenses for the utility or the tax bill or the insurance company. We're in all those businesses. So, very simple. Invoice Cloud, billers, people that send out bills and collect, would love to have 100% paperless billing, no expenses in billing, and 100% auto pay. No hassle with collections. The only hassle becomes when somebody changes their checking account and forgets to update their checking account
Right.
information, or changes their credit card information and doesn't update it. But those are minor.
I'm guilty of that. Yeah.
Yeah, those are minor, easy to handle things that can automatically be done. I mean, oh, your credit card's expiring in 60 days. How? Well, that's a helpful email to get from the electronic bill presentment and payment company. That's Invoice Cloud. So, yeah, I'm excited because it's in an $18 billion addressable market. It's really only in utilities, tax billing, and insurance today. It's just starting in consumer finance, which is bigger than any of those other
Yeah.
markets, auto loans and mortgages and so forth. So huge, ramp, huge runway, and big market, and the best product. So a commitment to product leadership. So in this case, it's true single instance, multi-tenanted SaaS, true SaaS based. So everybody's using the same software. And that's a major advantage in this electronic bill presentment and payment industry, because it's the only one that is really true SaaS, true single instance, multi-tenanted. And simple practice is, so we have an enterprise sales force at Invoice Cloud, and I would encourage anybody that's top talent to get involved there, because those folks are doing really well, making a lot of money, and enjoying themselves. Simple Practice is a product, is another company that EngageSmart owned that we purchased. I purchased back in March of 2017 when it was quite small, and now it's quite big. And it is a product-led growth company. So they're actually, aren't salespeople in that company. It's literally a free trial that converts into a paid subscription over time. And so, Invoice Cloud more interesting for this group of people. But
Yeah.
think, in Simple Practice, they are starting to build a sales force to go after partners and insurance companies and insurance payers, because now they've gone beyond practice management into practice management for wellness professionals like psychologists, psychiatrists, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists,
Yeah.
acupuncture, and so forth. They've gone beyond that now to actually do collections on bills as well through revenue cycle management. So, and we are hiring a sales force for that.
Well, it's a great success story. I know a lot of work and blood, sweat, and tears went into it, and you had a lot of help. But yeah, it's a privilege to be associated with what the company is doing. So, Bob, the title of this podcast is called Coach2Scale. So, we're trying to build a community of people who actually give a crap about coaching and developing other people and achieving large scale success through people, helping them grow. You're someone who's modeled that for many years. And usually people who care about coaching others have had that behavior modeled to them, for them, somewhere along the way. Who is somebody in your life, in your career, whose coaching has had a positive impact on what you've done and who you are today?
Well, I've had a lot of great coaches. I mean, the first coach that comes to mind, believe it or not, is a guy named Russ Downs that was my junior high basketball coach. And, this is a guy, I wasn't that good, but, he would, after practice, he'd have, games that if people wanted to hang around and spend a little extra time. This is in seventh grade. He would hang around, and he would help, and he would play with everybody and sort of get them to, pass the ball, cut to the basket, he'd pass it back, and so forth. And, he was just a very motivational, positive attitude is so much in coaching. You want to encourage people to take chances, make mistakes, and learn from them. So when, an example I use is, when I was coaching my son when in his first sales job out of college, this is 12 years ago, and he's a sales leader now. But he was the company that had a hard product to sell. It was, dialing for dollars, like 80 to 100 calls a day, and he was just getting no, 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 no. I'm not interested. No, I don't want to talk to you. No, I don't want a demo. Do I want anything? And I said, you understand that that you're going to get a yes every 100 calls. what you're doing is building the no ladder. You know, each leg of each step in the ladder that's a no gets you one step closer to the yes. So you should actually thank the person that says no. Say, thank you for saying no, because you just gave me the opportunity to spend my time on somebody that is going to say yes, and I'm going to be able to help improve their systems and their situation, at work. So no is not no. I think of the no as a not yet. And I'd want to thank you for being transparent with me and not dragging me along, because we do get folks that say, "Oh yeah, that might be interesting," when they're really not interested. So I appreciate the candor and transparency. Next, and you move on. Sometimes you actually get to keep that prospect that said no because of the discussion, but not always, not generally. So you move on, and now and that gamification of the no ladder for my son was pivotal for him to stay with it and spend his 2 years at that company going through this very difficult process as a first job out of college to actually build a skill around rapport building and keeping somebody on the phone that normally would be hanging up. So just as an example, but anyway, I would say that Bill Wade at Network One taught me the payments business. That was instrumental. I think that the way that we organize our company, Matt, is inverted pyramid. As a CEO, I was at the bottom of the organization, and I worked for everybody above me, which was my leadership team first, but customers were at the very top. So I would say that I got a lot of coaching from my leadership team, like Kristen Kenny, who you mentioned is the chief people officer, who has now, I've insisted that she take the summer off, but she's in high demand for a chief people officer positions in several locations, which I've introduced her to. But I'm telling everybody, don't hire. You do not let her start before September. She is taking the summer off with her 6-year-old daughter. I think she's about to be 6. And Kinsley, she's wonderful. But I learned a lot from Kristen. I learned a lot from Cassandra Hudson, our CFO. I learned a tremendous amount from Alan Canzano, our EVP of Corp Dev and Strategy. Kevin O'Brien, who now runs Invoice Cloud, he taught me about being more thoughtful and and really careful about decision making. I was much more quick and not always right, but never in doubt. Typical CEO. So I think I learned from everybody. Matt, you've taught me a lot already, and we've only had a couple conversations. So life is about growth. You grow or die, whether you're a plant or an animal. We're animals. You got plants behind you, and if they stop growing, bye-bye.
Yeah, that's why that thing's fake, because it would die if I was in charge of keeping up with it, and my wife doesn't want to come near this area.
I don't blame you.
Bob, favorite coach? So like kind of a name that a lot of people would know. Like just what comes to mind when I say, who's your favorite coach?
I actually think that, and I'm not thrilled with Alex Cora. He's a Red Sox coach. I'm not thrilled with his activities around cheating, when he was with the Houston Astros and somewhat with the Boston Red Sox as well, by trying to steal signs. But I would say as a coach, he's today's coach, right? I mean, he empathizes with the players. He's a very good field manager. Terry Francona is also a very strong field manager, game manager, where they know when to pull, when to push. They know when to, take a chance on somebody that's been a little bit cold and give them an opportunity to pinch hit when you think, what are they doing? And, and I just find that he has a method of inspiring confidence and leveling up the players collectively. If you look at the Red Sox averages in the beginning of the season versus what their averages are right now, it's a very young team, and they're bringing them along. And that team is, I think, it's the youngest roster, and might be the youngest roster in the miniatures. Really? And they've unloaded all of the experienced talent, almost all of the experienced talent, and they're actually overperforming, right? They're maybe close to 10 games over 500. And I predicted they were going to be a 500 team at best by the end of the season. So I think Alex Cora has the right attitude, hard work, fundamental coaching around defense, discipline, plate discipline, not swinging at balls, taking the walk, building and using your attributes like speed as assets that are overpowering to other teams. They're stealing a lot of aces.
Yeah, focusing on the behaviors too, not just the results. Like what do you do well, put you in the position where you can be successful. You don't have to swing at the pitch, right? Applauding the batters who, may not have gotten as many hits or doubles, but they're getting on base with walks, right? The vanity metrics, type of
No,
thing.
no,
Love
I completely agree. Rob Refsnyder, who is an outfielder that can hit lefties really well, he would, in a lot of teams he'd be playing both ways, against righties and lefties, and I like him at playing against lefties. So it's like, and so does Core, and he's perfectly happy and willing to have the difficult conversations with a player like Refsnyder, who would love to be playing every day, and that's a big part of this is you having the difficult conversation. No one likes to do it, but you need to do it, and that's a big thing in terms of growing your team. If you're not thinning the herd for those that aren't making it, it's everybody knows it. Everybody sees it. You're keeping
Yeah.
somebody that shouldn't be there. It's the observable is very negative reflection on the manager. You need to be patient to a point, but if they're not getting it, and they're consistently just not going to get up there. You just got to have that difficult conversation and free that person up to find something that's a better match for that person. Right? When one door closes, another one opens. You need to help them find that one.
I just became a soccer fan over the summer, and I got introduced to the whole Euros and the Euro Cup, and I've been following those matches and even listening to it on the radio, which is kind of crazy. But they're beating up the manager, the coach of Portugal, because that manager has not had the difficult conversation with their number one player, Cristiano Ronaldo, who is one of the most famous soccer players in soccer history. But I don't think he's like 40 something years old, and he just can't. He's just not getting it done. And part of it's probably because he's 40 something years old and there's 16-year-olds on the team, and they have this awesome bench of players. Anyway, they got eliminated, and now the manager's taking a beating in the press from the fans and the media because he did not have that difficult conversation. He did not make the difficult decision that seemingly needed to be made. So I don't know. Your comments there just made me think of that, and I'm practicing my soccer knowledge.
I think it's a great point.
So Bob, as we close it out here, a lot of folks that listen and listen to this podcast are just getting started in sales leadership for the first time. They received that battlefield promotion. They did all those things that facilitated success at the individual contributor level, and they got that battlefield promotion that says, great job as a sales rep. Congratulations, you're now a manager. Any advice for those folks who are in sales leadership for the first time?
Yes, I think that it is, to a certain extent, you've done the selling part of it, so you understand sales. Being a player coach, my favorite coach ever, Bill Russell. Bill Russell, Celtics. In 13 years, Bill Russell won 11 NBA titles.
It's
Right?
amazing.
So, stud, not the tallest, not the strongest, but a natural leader that dug in on defense. And for a few of those years, he wasn't just a player, the
The
center
player
of the
coach,
team.
right?
He was the coach. He was
Yeah.
the head coach. So
Yeah.
he was a player coach. So to the extent that you can actually get in and show your younger your teammates, your entry level salespeople, how to do it by doing it. Let them get on the call. Go through the, obviously we all use Zoom or Gong or something equivalent to that now. I mean, what NFL team doesn't use NFL films, right? I mean, if you're not using film to show somebody how to be a better cornerback by showing, here's how Revis did it for years, you're making a mistake. So, but review calls together, but also jump on and let them listen to you do it. Let them be there in the room. And I think that the sales leadership, if it isn't a remote job and you can pull your team together on a regular basis, I would be highly encouraging in room work. I mean, you've got to get people together listening to each other to learn. That's the fastest way to learn. And, otherwise it's got to be a lot of Gong, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of review, and it can work. I mean, it's worked both ways at Invoice Cloud, but I'm a big proponent for in-person work and for sales teams and customer service teams in particular. So be a player coach, be patient, but not too patient. Set goals together with that, with your teammates, with the people that in my world, you would be reporting to those salespeople. You're there to remove barriers for those salespeople. That's your job as a salesman. So you're reporting to them. They're asking you for help. You want to be sure that they know that they've got to make X number of calls, no matter how much time it takes to make them. They got to be making them, and they got to be making them every day, every week. And that you want, when they fall out, and you're going to have in sales, you get the top 30% are getting 70% of the sales done, and the bottom 30% probably should be moving on, and the middle 30 or 40%, I guess, is about 100%. The middle 40% are opportunities, right?
Opportunities, yeah.
Right. But what we make a big mistake by spending all of our time with the lower 30% and not enough time with the opportunities and with the top 30%. So don't just try to fix problems that are going to probably be unfixable. Make sure your winners are winning, and make sure that they're sharing the tips that they learn along the way. That's what makes a great sales manager. That's what makes a sales manager, in my opinion. When a person on the sales team learns a method of getting a demo, let's say, that somebody else hasn't figured out and it works, if they don't share it because they want to be number one, I can't have that person on my team. I have to have.
Bob?
I have to have the person that shares that on my team.
So you just made me think of something when you use that example. Someone we both know, Dan. Dan works for your company. I worked for him for 10 plus years. And the one thing I always remember about him is that whenever anybody did something well, he would say, can you go and show and teach and explain what you do to everybody else, right? When selling embedded software licensing deals was just starting out at Oracle, there was this one person who did an awesome job, and he had them go New England, upstate New York, Philadelphia, everywhere that Dan covered in the Mid-Atlantic North, and train them on how to do those type of embedded software licensing deals. And as a result, everybody had that arrow in their quiver, and those became the biggest and really the easiest deals to do that benefited the client and the salesperson. But it just made me think
and what
of that.
happened
So
to that?
it's sharing.
What happened to that person that was doing that?
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
Yeah, what happened to the person that Dan asked to go train those people? Where did that person end up?
Something happened in the audio here. So can you start your question over? Nate, we're going to edit that out.
Yes. What happened to the person that Dan encouraged to go train these other areas?
Well, a few things. Well, one, some of this is my opinion, but he stayed longer, right? He got that motivation, that energy, that pat on the back, that level of recognition that all salespeople, I think, crave. You get better at something when you teach it. So he upped his game, and he closed, his name was David. He closed the biggest deals at the company, even bigger than what he did before. And everybody always came to him to want to promote him. And he said, no, I'm good. So a lot of good things happened.
Yeah. So there's going back to that discussion around the more you give, the more you get. Selfish, but
yeah, so true. Well, Bob, that's probably a great place to leave it. We covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the role of luck. We talked about the importance of having a chip or finding your chip, the importance of taking time, going awkward early and building rapport, even when it seems uncomfortable. We talked about servant leadership. I love what you talked about, that inverse pyramid. The leader works for his or her people. So thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me today.
my pleasure. A lot of fun. Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Right.
Thanks again, Bob. And thanks to all of you out there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Wherever you consume your podcasts, engage. If it's on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If it's on LinkedIn, hit the like button. Most importantly, engage. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you want to see more of. We want to bring interesting guests who bring interesting and actionable ideas to you to help you do what you do, make it a little bit easier. So until next time, coach them if you want to keep them. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at coachem.io. That's COACHEM.io. And follow us on Twitter at CoachemNow. See you all next week. Thanks for joining. And remember, coach them if you want to keep them.